everyone, and welcome to the Bollywood Cinema Club, a podcast where we take a look at Indian cinema every other week. I am still your host, Chris Dashu, and I am joined by my good friend. You've heard him on here before, and if you listened to the first Baahubali episode, you knew he was going to be back because, hey, that wasn't a complete story. We know you, SS Rajamouli. I know you can tell a story in one movie. I've seen Triple R. We're not talking about Triple R. We're here to talk about the second film in the Baahubali series. Joining me as always is my good friend, graphic designer, man about town, Dustin. Dustin, are you ready to talk Baahubali 2?
I am ready.
We're going to be talking about Baahubali 2, the conclusion. So the film came out in 2017. It is written and directed by SS Rajamouli with the story by V. Prasad. It stars, like we mentioned last time, Prabhas, Rana Daggubati, Anushka Shetty, Tamana, Nassar, Ramya Krishna, a whole bunch of people. But more or less, we're talking Prabhas, we're talking Rana Daggubati, we're talking a lot of people because this is the conclusion to the first movie that we talked about, Baahubali, The Beginning. Could you believe that this movie is just called The Conclusion? I actually don't know why it's called Baahubali 2. It should have just been called Baahubali, The Conclusion, right?
Right.
I think this is all Baahubali just as a thing.
Yeah, part 1, part 2, just not Baahubali 2.
The film does star Prabhas as both Amendra Baahubali and Mahendra Baahubali, both father and son, because this movie is more about Amarendra Baahubali, Baahubali's father, who, well, we'll talk all about it. He goes on a journey of his own, apparently, and we find out how Katapa turned on his master, his master, is the way, I guess you perceive it.
I suppose. I mean, they're family / friends, but there's also a slave-master relationship.
He's also still his slave, technically.
Yeah.
And and there's two storylines here once again, but I think we would both agree it's more one story than the other. So I will ask you, Dustin, as I ask you every time, tell me a little bit about what you thought about Baahubali 2, the conclusion.
Well, you can tell that it was a different part of the movie in that, I don't know, it had a different energy to it, just jumping right into it. You're going right in, picking up where the last one left off, but it almost felt different. I don't know how to explain it. Like it started off slower, if that makes sense. Not that the other one was fast by any means, but like it was just a lot of like somebody would say something and then the camera would zoom in on their face. Someone would say something and the camera would zoom in on their face. Like everything was this dramatic Ken Burns effect that happened constantly. Outside of that, I really did kind of get into the story of Baahubali's dad, Baahubali.
The only thing that's different is their name. Amarendra is his dad, and Mahendra is, again, they're both Baahubali. They are.
Yeah. But just how everything unfolded with Queen Mother being deceived and all, like that was like the web of lies that was happening all the while he's just trying to hook up with Devon Sarah, if I'm saying that right. And, that was just kind of there's two stories happening at the same time. And I thought they did a good job of like weaving them into each other. And then they came to a head, much like in the first one, things came to a head.
Yeah, I think, for me, I don't think I enjoyed it as much as the first one, but I was kind of struggling with this because the first movie doesn't tell a complete story. There's nothing that I can say that can change that. It tells a part of the whole. And that's it's weird. Like,
I think that's why I liked part 2 is because I needed part 2.
Yeah.
Finish part 1.
Right. Part 2 was a requirement.
I had to have it.
Yeah. I don't think that this movie is a failure. I don't think that this movie is bad. I was having a hard time wrapping my mind around this movie because the story that it tells should have been told in the first movie.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep.
Like the way that the character of Katapa, played by Sathya Raj, is the narrator of the piece, is what it ends up feeling like with the framing device of the first movie continuing into the second movie of he's now recounting to Baahubali's adopted parents what happened to Baahubali's dad. So he serves as effectively the narrator for this entire movie up until the third act. And again, so we're looking at a movie that's 171 minutes. So it's almost 3 hours long. The part of the film featuring Baahubali the son is the last 40 minutes. And in a lot of ways, it kind of feels like an afterthought. It's like they forgot that there was a story back in the present that they had to come and readdress. Them. Oh my God, we don't know what happens to Baahubali yet.
Well, while I was watching it, like I paused it at one point to like go get something to drink, and I saw the little, time left bar, progress bar, and I was like, oh my God, are they going to be able to wrap this up? They're still talking about his dad.
Well, and that's the thing. I'm really shocked at how little time they leave the story that they spent so much time in the first movie with. Look, I mean, realistically, the first movie, 2/3 of it is the Baahubali, the son story. And then the last act is the past. And then the first 2/3 of this is readdressing the end of the last movie. So I get what they were going for. It's 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 3. I mean, that's what they were doing. I get it.
Yeah.
I just don't think for me, that's a super compelling way to tell this story. And I think more than ever, it really goes back to in this movie and a little bit in the first one, they should never have had him play his dad.
Yeah, that was such a weird.
At this point,
it's connecting.
I get it because they kind of make note of it. Baladeva does at the end of the movie. He's like, I faced you before and I killed you and now I'm gonna kill you. As opposed to having somebody else do it for me. And yes, I understand that moment is earned, and I would agree the moment is earned, as I'm sure you would agree. It's a completely earned moment, given the journey we've gone on, and given the way they're telling the story with him literally being played by the same actor, both the dad and the son. But I feel like that moment, as impactful as it is, would not and isn't so successful that they could have done something different, like casting a different actor as his dad.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't serve a purpose. I mean, it serves a purpose in the sense that Prabhas isn't just in the half of the movie and it's not, the other half of somebody else's movie, but some of the best sequels do something different and interesting with the expectations of the first movie. Terminator 2, Godfather 2, both movies that take the original film's premise or the narrative structure or something that the first film did and they change it drastically. Godfather 2. You wouldn't think that it would be a movie about Beto, but yet here we are for more than half of the movie is Robert De Niro's. Again, not something you would expect watching the first movie. Just like in Terminator 2, you wouldn't expect Schwarzenegger is the hero given the way the first movie plays out, but that's what ends up happening. In this movie, they should have just cast somebody else as his dad.
Yeah.
Don't do the thing that makes the movie less successful overall just because in certain moments, it's kind of worth patting ourselves on the back. That's what it feels like when he's facing him at the end of the movie and it's like, I faced you before and I beat you then and I can beat you now. Yeah, great moment. But I wish that the characters were different or it was different casting. Because that's the thing, the character of Baahubali, the dad, and Baahubali, the son, effectively the same character, even.
Yeah. And if you aren't paying close attention, you probably could get lost in what's happening.
And again, it's not because we're Westerners. It's just the style of storytelling is very...
Well, and the transition of timeline happens quick. We're in son's timeline, boom, we're in dad's timeline.
Yeah, let me tell you a story real quick about what his dad did. And it's like, oh my God, this is 3 hours now of this. We walk away from the main story for 3 hours. I mean, again, you can make the case that it's story A and story 1A and 1B. Again, you could make the case that they have to both exist at the same time to tell the full story. I could see that being the case, but honestly, in a lot of ways, the stuff that goes on in the second movie, I was trying to figure out if it was as compelling as the kind of conflict in the first movie. Because in the second movie, it's this kind of, and we've seen it before in other things, and doing it here is no different. This fake out where they're trying to convince everybody of one thing that is not remotely true, and they end up convincing characters who have acted smart up until this point to act like idiots for one moment long enough just to achieve their goals, and then the moment that's done, they snap right back. And I find that to be very lazy storytelling-wise, me personally. And this entire second movie hinges on you being able to believe Bahubali's mom, Bahubali the dad, his mom, adopted mother, is such a strict authoritarian, which we didn't really see to be the case, kind of. She's a very morally upstanding person, to put her own son to death.
Yeah.
On the words of two people that should not be trusted and clearly have ulterior motives.
Without vetting anything. Just like, oh, he did? Okay, he's dead.
Right. Again, I don't want to get too bogged down in it because it was a frustrating part of this movie for me because it's so lazy. And it feels like I've seen it a million times in a million other things where one character, it's just fucking say you love, just say this. Don't just sit and we saw it in the Ranbir Kapoor rom-com that we talked about after we did Brahmastra, where it's like, just fucking say it. Just say it. Don't sit here. It's not realistic. It is in the sense that, yes, I guess people do have unrequited loves and they don't want to be honest about it, but you're using the storytelling medium of film to be lazy. And this movie traffics in that because that's the entire conflict in this movie is a manufactured conflict. There's not actually any conflict in this movie between the characters that are having a conflict, the mom and Bahubali, the dad. There's not actually any conflict there.
Yeah, which does almost kind of irritate you as a viewer. I was irritated about that. And the conflict that I was more invested in is Katapa's conflict, having to take the directive to go kill Bahubali. That was because that was real. It was a result of the manufactured conflict, but that was a real thing that was oh no.
Well, and we know where Katapa ends up. We know he's going to end up stabbing Bahubali in the back. We've already seen it happen. We know because it's a flashback that there's nothing that could happen that will change any of this.
Right.
But even though effectively the stakes are gone, because we know how this flashback ends with the death of Bahubali, I was still, like you said, I was so invested. Sathya Raj is a fantastic actor. I have not seen him in any other Indian cinema films that I've watched, but my God, he kind of upstages Bahubali in this movie in a way. The character of Katapa is way more interesting in this movie than I think anybody else is almost.
I was going to echo that same thing. It almost felt like he could have his own movie.
Totally. Well, and we touched on it last episode, and I'll mention it here again. Other Bahubali things are coming out, Bahubali TV show. So again, where this ends up, if I'm Pravas, I'm going to sign up to do more of this because this movie, the highest grossing film in India. Still.
Wow.
Yep.
It is cool that I think there's a lot of Indian culture and mythology woven into the movie. And I think that's really cool. That's what I liked about Brahmastra too, was it's anchored in some of that stuff, which I think is really neat. And I think that allows you to take it a lot of places, allows you to keep expanding it or tell new stories.
Well, and also, again, the flavor that S.S. Rajamouli and his production team is coming into this with is so different from what we would expect to see on a network television show or a television show based on a pre-existing intellectual property. Who knows what it's going to be? Mm-hmm. If it's half as good as this, it'll be really something exciting. But I was really kind of a little disappointed by this movie.
Yeah, in terms of coming out of part one, you needed part two. We had to have it.
Right. We literally don't have a fucking story otherwise.
Right. But the expectation I had going into part two, it was underwhelming in that respect. And the gal he was courting, the whole first movie, the girl that he was trying to hook up with.
Oh, yeah.
Her hand. Kind of it just, she was just there. In the second movie, it never really went anywhere after that.
Yeah, Tamana is, I think, criminally wasted as Avantika.
Yeah.
She's I don't get it. It's weird. Again, this, in a lot of ways, this should have been 3 movies, I think. I really think that there was enough with the Baladeva character and the son, Bahubali. So the uncle and the nephew. I think there was enough there to make it a full third movie, have this movie be the entire second, just end the first movie at that point where it's and we're going to tell the story of Bahubali dying, in the next movie. But don't give us any of the stuff in the first movie of him and keep it like a nice lean 2.5 hours. And then come back in this movie, tack on another 30, 40 minutes, give it a nice 3.5 hour runtime. And then the last movie, hit it with just the 3 hours so that you've got short, long, and then right in the middle at the end. And I don't know why the Baladeva character is an interesting character that ends up going nowhere.
Yeah, I think even in the second one, like I was saying earlier, there's just a bunch of like one-line things that are like over dramatized. It feels like he's just always like so tense and angry, and he'll say something, and then it zooms in on his face, and then he punches a wall, and like it's just kind of different energy than like in part one.
Well, what I don't get about this film specifically is why not use this opportunity showing these flashbacks to really flesh out the Baladeva character, to give us an idea of why he is the way he is. Bijaladeva, his dad, doesn't get any more characterization either, but like I kind of get a better sense of why he's doing what he's doing than Baladeva. He's just more popular than me, and that's why I don't like him. It's, man, like, I get that this is supposed to be an epic story and it's supposed to be themes that are, universal, right? But I don't know if you need to boil it down to that base of an element. Like, give it, well, you know what I mean? Like, two siblings don't get along because one is better at something than the other.
It's kind of like a Cain and Abel story almost.
That's what I mean. Like, it's so biblical, mythological, Shakespearean, however you want to look at it. It's a story that is as generic as they come. And as with all the set dressing and with all the quality actors and the quality writing and the musical numbers, it still ends up just kind of being okay. I like the first movie a hell of a lot more.
Yeah. Well, Queen Mother is just like, I got angry at her character in me. And I guess that's probably what they were going for, because she's being deceived and you're just like, come on, lady. But you get this sense of like, there's all these, anytime someone promises something in this movie, by God, you are not breaking that promise.
Right. Boy, it's like golden clad, bro.
No,
it's not
matter.
even ironclad. It's golden clad. You don't even touch it because you don't even get near it.
It's like, well, I said you were going to die, so I'm sorry. No takesy-backsies.
I don't care if you're my son.
I said it. So, I mean, Queen Mother may not always be right, but I'm never wrong.
Right. Exactly. That's what and that's what it feels like in this movie. And again, when you have a manufactured conflict that is then pushed to its kind of fatalistic ends, you can't help wonder just like, what are you covering? What failing in the script are you covering up for? Or are you just being lazy?
I kept waiting for this moment of Queen Mother just being like, all right, hold up. What happened?
Right.
But like, it's never that moment.
Ask Baahubali. He'll be honest with you. And if you believe that he's an honest person.
Yeah. You raised him.
Yeah.
They kind of touch on that. Like, that's the only angle he's coming from. He's like, I'm just doing what you raised me to do.
Yeah. You were my mom. You told me what to do and I did it. And now you're telling me not to do that? Like,
you told me to promise to be honest. So by God, I'm going to be going to be honest all the time.
To a fault. To an unrealistic fault.
Except when they're in person catfishing Devon Sarah at her kingdom.
So I wanted to talk about that because the character that Sweetie Shetty plays in this movie, Devasena, whatever the hell her character's name is, because they say it a bunch of different ways in the movie.
Yeah, they do.
They say her name plenty of times.
The right way, though.
She is given so much characterization compared to Tamana's character.
Yeah.
Like, to a point where...
the flashback.
I mean, I get it. She's the one that's locked up that we see in the first movie. We're getting context as to why she's locked up, why she made the decision that she made, why she is the way that she is. But just like the Queen Mother, she's also unrealistically standing her moral ground.
Yeah.
Like,
she digs her heels in.
It's like, hey, no, like this was just like a big misunderstanding intentionally. Like nobody had any compunction to say that at any fucking point. It's just very contrived. That's the word I would use because that is what it is.
Yeah. I did have to chuckle when they get to her kingdom or whatever and they just pretend to be other people.
Yeah.
Just
You
to
don't
gain
know
her
who
favor.
Bahubali looks like?
Just to gain her favor. Oh yeah, this is some idiot, and I'm his friend or his uncle or whatever.
But we do get introduced to when they go to the kingdom of Kundala. We get introduced to Subaraju playing Kumara Varma, who may be the second best character in the movie.
I like him. Yeah,
He gets a fucking arc. He gets an arc in the movie. He gets some pretty good. He's like the only one outside of Satyaraj who gets like fun scenes with Prabhas. Everything else is like so deathly serious that again, it's not that it's not fun. It's just Prabhas is at his best when he's loose and fun. And he's kind of not allowed to do that in this movie as much because, again, this movie's more Empire Strikes Back than it is Return of the Jedi.
Oh, yeah.
But Subaraju is so good. He is so good as Kumara Varma to the point where, like, his death in the movie is more impactful than Bahubali's death.
Yeah. When it happened, I remember feeling, or like, almost like saying out loud, like, no.
So what ends up happening is he is roped into killing Baladeva first because Baladeva's dad seemingly has wizened up, gotten his brain about him and says, well, this is bad. I don't want to be part of this anymore. Only way to stop it is for you to preemptively kill Baladeva. So go do it. I'll let you into his chamber. Lo and behold, he goes in, and obviously it was a trap just so that they could use it as the inciting incident to have Bahubali killed because he was trying to kill the king, Baladeva.
Yeah.
It's so fucking contrived, though. But it works because for me, it's a contrived thing that they managed to make it work because of the scene with Subaraju and Rana Dagubati between Baladeva and Kumara Varma. Like, it works because of that scene with the two of them in his bedroom. And you can just see Kumara Varma realizing, oh no, I have completely shit the bed here. And there's nothing I can do about it. And that scene is more...
My only way out is to try to kill everybody.
Right. And it's more impactful than everything else in the movie. Even the scene where Katapa kills Bahubali.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I don't know, like, it was just something about it where you now understood that while the trap had been set, it still relied on one person stumbling into it, seemingly. Someone who we followed for, almost 2 hours at this point, and he's, again, kind of grown on you as an audience member because when you're introduced to him, he's kind of this cowardly dick who is taking advantage of Bahubali, kind of making him look better than he actually is. And by the end of it, Bahubali is like, you have the opportunity to actually not be a coward. All you got to do is in the moment, stand up for something. And you see him get that moment. It's really impactful. And the movie kind of never rises back up to that moment. And it should have, because it has a moment right then and there, like 20 minutes later, where Bahubali dies. And that should have been the lower peak before they reached the summit. Because the summit should have been that moment where Bahubali dies. Everything else is the way the movie treats everything else is like a falling action. And I think that was a mistake because Bahubali and Baladeva's feud at the center of the movie, or Baladeva's feud with himself, because again, like, that's the thing. Baladeva's not, like, he's just kind of, Bahubali doesn't know he's doing any of it.
Right.
I mean,
just living life.
Yeah. Like, it's moving rocks and helping the kids water the trees and planting the seeds and da-da-da-da-da-da. And it's like, you believe that this guy's trying to kill the king?
Right. And Bahubali's doing all this stuff for their kingdom and just being a great guy. All the while, Baladeva's in the background just looking at him like, you dick.
Even though he's
I
king.
hate you.
Even though he's king.
Yeah.
And like, yes,
like he could have just let it be.
Right. And that's an interesting kind of angle to it. The idea of like, well, Baladeva is just so consumed by hatred of Bahubali.
Adoration.
Right. But I get it. I don't know. I get why the story is as generic as it is, because it is the most basic way to tell this story.
Yeah.
You said it's biblical. It's Cain and Abel, like you said.
Yeah, it really is.
It is. And you know what? I think the other kind of missed opportunity in this movie is I kind of wanted more action.
Yeah, you only got a little bit at the end.
Yeah. And then like, oh my God, okay. So we've talked about the first two acts of the movie. You have Bahubali and Katapa going to Kundala so he can meet Devasena and they can fall madly in love with each other until they, it's all of a sudden Baladeva wants to marry Devasena for no reason other than because he wants to.
Saw a picture of her and he's like, she's hot.
Yeah, I want this.
And he likes her, so I want her.
Right. But I'm just shocked by how little time they give the third act to this movie. It really is surprising because it literally feels like they end the flashback and then it goes, all right, now we got to go kill Baladeva. Like, what? Well, there got to be anything in between this? Like, anything in between this.
I did like the bulls with fire horns.
The movie's not stylistically uninteresting.
I mean, in the first movie, you had the fire blanket.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
And now you got fire cows.
The spinning chariot, the blade chariot makes a reappearance.
The palm tree human catapult.
Oh my God, let's talk about it. So there is a point in this movie where they're like, how do we get into this castle? And there's like, Baahubali, use your noggin, you smart guy, you. So what do? I don't know how else to explain this other than you have a group of people standing with shields in such a way that they make a circle and then they fly through the air.
Yeah, they kind of all just like hook elbows and then their shields up and spin through the air and land on their feet.
I guess so. Land like a human bomb on top of other people. It's unrealistic, but it's the kind of action that I show up for with this kind of movie, right? Like that's what
gonna do.
That's what I want. Like that's what I want from this kind of movie is I want it to just be something I've never seen before. And I've never seen that before.
Yeah, we got that in both movies.
Yeah, I've seen things in these movies now that I have never seen before that are interesting and novel and feel like someone thought them out. But then you contrast it against the plot of the movie, and the plot of the movie is it doesn't find the same note in this film that the first one did. Because I would say first movie had maybe 20 minutes more action. It's not like the first movie was a hardcore action movie either.
Yeah, but there was more.
More, but again, quality and quantity obviously are... I wish the third act of this movie had been 20 to 30 minutes longer just to give that conflict between Baladeva and Baahubali a true conclusion. Because yes, the way Baladeva meets his end, I think is rather satisfying, but it's not visually satisfying. And as an audience member, I'm not sure that I was as entertained by the demise of the villain of not just one of the characters, but essentially every character in the movie. I don't know if he met an end deserving of the terrible things he had done throughout the movie. Like he should have really met his end in a spectacular way, like in spectacular fashion.
I was hoping he would have like gotten knocked off that huge waterfall mountain.
Had the head of his statue smash him.
Because that's what Baahubali had to climb to get there.
Okay.
I felt it only fitting that he fall from it.
Well, I mean, they cheated a little bit, right? And they had the head of his statue. So that was...
Somehow a huge golden head floated down the river.
All the way down the river and all the way over the waterfall. But hey, it's a good visual when it's sitting next to the lingam at the bottom of the waterfall that Baahubali had to move. And here comes the giant gold head of Baladeva. I like more than anything else, the thing I probably walk away from this movie liking the most is the promise of something else now that we know what the story is.
Yeah.
Because like anything else, right? Like any other series of movies, they have to give us an idea of who the character is. Most of the time they do it in the first movie. Very rarely are they doing it in a second movie. But sometimes they do if they're worried that bogging us down in exposition is going to be something nobody's interested in. Look at something like that Violent Night movie where it's like, here's 2 pieces of flashback, but we're not going to spend an hour on it.
Right.
I'm excited for the promise of what comes next because now they don't have to talk about this anymore. And we don't have to have Baahubali and Baahubali's dad. Like, we don't need to revisit that anymore. We can have Prabhas playing Baahubali being, the king that he's supposed to be, but then taking on the threats that are even bigger than Baladeva, that require him to maybe go back to Bijaladeva and say, all right, I know you had my father killed. I need you to get the people that support you or whatever to come help me to defeat this bigger threat. I'm interested in that because that's what they have the opportunity to do now. This story does a good enough job getting us to the starting line is kind of what it feels like in a lot of ways. Like this movie got us to the starting line. Now I would like to see what they do with it after that.
Maybe Baahubali will have another son, and he can play that character.
Oh my God. 3 times. 3 times Prabhas has played Baahubali. You saw him in Baahubali 1. I don't think there is any more Baahubali movies. I don't think Baahubali 3 is a thing. I mean, again, I think it's the TV show and the extended, media that, movie tie-ins and all kinds of stuff. But there's a TV show, so coming. So I'm excited.
Yeah.
I'm very much interested to see what the franchise has to offer past this point, because the character of Avantika, not at all addressed in the second movie, could be a main character in the show. We have all kinds, Katappa could be a main character in the show. You could do flashbacks and bring back someone like Subaraju as Kumara Varma. You could do all kinds of stuff, really.
Yeah, I would like to see more Katappa.
Like just across the board, nothing else.
Well, yeah, just give me Katappa Lorian.
Just do that. We'll just have him, and I don't know who this movie's equivalent of a Grogu-esque character is. That just wander the Indian outback, the Indian the countryside, getting into adventures.
Jungle.
Yeah, well, it's not all jungle.
Not all, but they reference it in the movie.
True. I would like to see that, because I think personally that's much more interesting than this. This is a very good start of your story. This is a very good conclusion to the story you set up in your first movie. But in terms of telling a story that ends up nailing it the way the first movie did, I don't think it did.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. It didn't stick the landing.
The first movie hit it. I mean, the first movie jumped it and got it, and it got exactly where it needed to be. I felt like at the end of the first movie, I, as an audience member, was exactly where the movie franchise wanted me to be.
Yeah.
And it deviated. And again, personally, this is all subjective. Personally, it didn't do the same note hitting that the first movie did. The first movie hit so many notes for me that I was really taken by it. I mean, the song on the waterfall, just the imagery at the beginning of that movie with Sivagami, and then how they introduce Baladeva as this kind of ball of energy and this kind of force to be reckoned with, and then just the second movie just kind of goes, where this is going, so let's tell you that story. And again, maybe they shouldn't have said at the end of the first movie, hey, Katappa's going to kill Baahubali, and it would have been, maybe that scene may have actually had an emotional weight to it, because we don't know how it happens. We know that it will happen given that Baahubali's dad is dead, but we don't know necessarily. We don't need to see it in the first movie.
Yeah.
Visually.
What that scene did offer, even though you knew it was going to happen, what it did offer was just the performance from Prabhas in that scene.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that delivered.
That's the part of that scene that delivered, is the two of them. But like I don't know. Like I compared that to the scene with Subaraju as Kumara Varma and Baladeva, like right before it even.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I mean, again, I think maybe in my mind that scene between Katappa and Baahubali is so built up that it couldn't ever really be as good as I hoped it would be. But I agree with you. The two of them is fantastic. I think just it's a weird narrative conceit that they get themselves into, where they're in the middle of nowhere fighting people, and then these people come down from the hills. But
that came out of nowhere, yeah.
Yeah, but we know Katappa is in the background, like biding his time. I wish that there had been more of we could see more of the struggle that Katappa's going. We could really understand, like, this is not going to be easy, even if, like we've mentioned, this is apparently a society of unyielding, morally upstanding people.
And again, in that part of the movie, fire lures all those bandits or whatever into the grassy area, lights the grassy area on fire.
Yeah, oh my God.
Fire again.
The visuals there with all the dudes nailed to that thing. Holy shit.
Yeah.
I mean, again, that's the thing that this movie does not disappoint on, is it doesn't disappoint visually, but I wasn't worried about it visually disappointing me, like, all.
Mm-hmm.
S.S. Rajamouli has a very, very, very specific way of presenting what he wants you to see. And in Triple R, it's there. In the first Baahubali, it's there. And in this movie, it's there. He understands how to shoot something so breathtaking in what it is that you're really just staring at it going, I have never seen something. And that happens multiple times in this movie, to the point where you're thankful that even if this movie is not as successful as the first one is, I'm still thankful that there are people out there making movies where by the end of it, I was like, even if I wasn't completely on board the way the filmmakers wanted me to be, I am on board with whatever you want to show me. Whatever else, wherever else you want to go, I'm on board. That is not an easy point to get with, especially if you're kind of middle of the road on the second movie like I am. You know, and look, Triple R is as much fun as these two movies, but I think now watching Baahubali 1, Baahubali 2, and Triple R, I think the one that I would go back to the most is Triple R. But I think that's because the story it tells is one whole story. And by the end of it, it leaves you in a spot where you can go, all right, I want to see more of this. But the story that it told didn't feel like okay, we're just getting to the point where we can let the characters loose. These two movies felt like, okay, we got to tell Bahubali's story before we let Baahubali loose to do his own thing.
Yeah, I don't know. I need to watch Triple R.
You really do.
You've referenced it a few times.
It's so good. It's so good. But again, it's very much just like this. It's the same big, over-the-top feel with stunning visuals and a flavor that is so unique to India that you could not mistake it for some other filmmaking country. You could not mistake it for a film made in the United States. Like, that's the thing that I appreciate about films like Baahubali, films like Triple R, is yes, they're action movies. Yes, they're telling these epic, grandiose Shakespearean stories that we've seen a million times before, but you know where this movie came from. You know the people behind it are really excited to show you something visually stunning, even if they can't nail it with the script. I mean, we talked about that with Brahmastra. It's almost the same problem, except it's not the dialogue in this movie, it's just the way they told the story. So, storytelling technique, if you want to look at it that way, I would say this is probably closer in quality to Brahmastra than it is to the original Baahubali.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Good assessment.
But by the end of Brahmastra, I feel the same way that I do here. I'm on board with whatever you want to show me next.
Yeah. So you had mentioned that this was still is the highest grossing movie in India. Is that right?
Yeah.
So to compare that to like U.S. movies, highest grossing movie in U.S., I mean, we've seen Avatar and Endgame. I know it's not an apples to apples comparison because it's two wildly different, I guess, like I mentioned earlier, there's culture woven into this movie, and that could be part of its success too, is because it very much is steeped in in Indian culture, mythology, whereas like Avengers Endgame, like, yeah, not really. Avatar, not really.
Yeah. Those are like created things and or adapted things.
But to highest grossing in one country, highest grossing in another country, I'm trying to see if there's any parallels there. There's big epic things happening, right? There's a big baddie in Endgame for sure.
Yeah.
But like, I just feel like watching Avatar, Endgame, Star Wars, there's a little more meat on the bone in those versus Baahubali.
Yeah. I mean, the second one, I don't think I don't think the first one. I think the first one actually stands as a pretty fun movie, but I think I would agree with your assessment of the second one for sure. I think if I'm sitting here thinking about this as, highest grossing Indian film of all time, $260 million, that's how much money it made. A lot of money. That's a lot of money in Indian cinema for people to have seen this movie at the time and it still be the highest grossing film. That's a lot of people who saw this. So, as we like to say, that many people can't be wrong. But to your point, it does feel a little one-dimensional. Mm-hmm. And I don't know what contributes to that, because that was also, again, kind of our sentiment in Brahmastra.
Yeah.
Kind of the same sentiment, is that it was a little too one note, a little flat.
Yeah, it needs a little enriching. And I think maybe what Star Wars Avengers have going for them is they do spend time on these other characters.
Well, and, I mean, again, we kind of have mentioned already that there are going to be more Baahubali things coming out. Yeah. So that's why I'm excited, because, again, this is not a traditional way of storytelling in Indian cinema. Again, I've mentioned it before. Yeah. Sequels aren't normally a thing. Like, sequels are uncommon. People don't
Maybe
make
I'll come
movies.
back to that thought in a few years.
Right. Like people aren't sitting and going, well, I've made this movie and I can make 18 more movies like it with the same characters. They go, I'm going to make this movie. And then if it's successful, I'll get different actors, but do essentially the same thing. The sequels, the way we know them here, where it's the Mummy 1, 2, 3, and maybe even 4, or Star Wars 1 through 8, or if you want to look at Marvel movies as all sequels to one another, Marvel's sequel nightmare, where you have to watch everything to understand it. Yeah, this is a different way of doing it. I think this is in its early stages. I think I mean, again, here's the fucking crazy thing. Triple R is like the movie that this wants to be.
Uh-huh.
That's the thing that I can't really drag this movie a whole lot.
It's almost like the director refined the formula.
Well, that's why it's like I want to see more Baahubali related content, because knowing what I know now with where Triple R goes, like I'm on board. Like,
yeah.
I've seen now what Triple R is and how good it is and how much myself and so many other people that I know went and saw it in theaters. People who have never seen an Indian cinema film in theaters before went and saw it, or were watching it on Netflix, or heard about it, and now they've heard about it because of the Academy Awards. By the way, I'm going to take this opportunity to, as always, around this time of the year, get on my soapbox, tell the Academy Award to go fuck themselves. I really don't appreciate the idea that okay, so Banshees of Inisherin, right? Martin McDonagh, he directed it, he wrote it, stars Brendan Gleeson and Colin Farrell, right? Not American actor. Academy Awards is a American institution, yeah? Movie is nominated for Best Picture. Actors in that film aren't American. Actors in that film live in a country other than the United States. What then determines a movie to be a foreign film? Is it the lack of English dialogue? Because if that's the case, dismantle your fucking award system, because movies like this, movies like Triple R, shouldn't be discounted for being nominated for Best Picture because you have to read subtitles. And if you think that that's okay, or that somehow is an acceptable way of doing this, you're contributing to the problem.
Yeah, because a movie is a movie.
Right. I watch everything with subtitles now. Period. English language, fucking Tamil, Telugu, Hindi, Zosho. I don't give a fuck. I'm watching it with subtitles. You know why? I'm going deaf. I'm getting old. I don't want to blare everything. And maybe I want to talk to somebody if we're not just sitting and focusing on the TV.
Mm-hmm.
But don't tell me, oh, well, foreign films are only movies that have subtitles.
Yeah, because that's not fair.
No, not fair to anyone making film outside of the United States who care about the Academy Awards. That's the thing.
Yeah.
I actually could give two shits. I don't make anything that anybody at the Academy is going to have anything to do with. I'm just one of the people who, like yourself, watches the things that the Academy spends all of their time also watching and self-ordaining that they know more than everybody else.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
But yeah, it continues to bother me as someone who's a fan of Indian cinema that because these films have subtitles, they are therefore considered foreign films and could not be nominated for Best Picture, which I think is,
that's an antiquated way to look at it. And we're better than that now. We should be.
We should be. Just like when one of my favorite movies, Zodiac, didn't get nominated in 2008 for an Oscar. Would you like to know why?
Why?
It was not nominated because it was one of the first films shot on digital. And at the time, the Academy said you couldn't nominate a movie that hadn't been shot on film.
Wow.
Let's see if they could get away with that now. Remember when the Academy was having this whole fucking, crisis of faith about shit on Netflix? Streaming? Is a streaming movie actually a movie? Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Actually. Shockingly. And you know what was really funny? The pandemic essentially destroyed that argument completely.
Yep, because where would we be without it?
Where would we be without streaming? We wouldn't have been able to see Triple R or anything for that matter in the last 3 years without it being beamed directly into our homes. So, yeah, the Academy, look, I'm never going to get invited to be part of their voting because I, like so many other people who, like yourself, like myself, watch movies all the time. We all know it's just a popularity contest. We're not fucking stupid. Nobody takes that shit seriously. They gave Green Book the Oscar. They gave Dances with Wolves the Oscar over Goodfellas. It took them 3 tries to give Scorsese the Oscar. Fucking Martin Scorsese had to have 3 tries to get an award from a bunch of old dipshits who didn't know what the fuck they were doing. So they gave the Oscar to Kevin, I'm on Yellowstone Costner. So I mean, nobody's talking about Dances with Wolves in 2023, but people are still watching Goodfellas.
Uh-huh.
They do not have their finger on the pulse. They have their finger firmly planted inside of their fucking butthole. I don't know. I mean, I don't know how else to explain it. Avatar got nominated for Best Picture. Didn't it? Am I lying there?
No, you did. It did. And just because it was creative. I mean, a lot of movies are creative.
Yeah.
It just had, I mean, it was, if you think about it, the way you mentioned like the Academy and just a bunch of old people, the way movies get made, it's almost like, especially if it's something they don't understand, be it language or, and on the flip side, Avatar being something that was basically just shot with people wearing jumpsuits with ping pong balls. Like
it was filmed through the magic of technology.
And so they probably looked at that like, wow, well, that's gotta win.
That's not only unique, but also fun. My grandkids would love this fun story about little blue people underwater. How quaint.
And they did spend a lot of money.
Look, when something like Top Gun Maverick gets nominated, you're trying real hard to stay relevant, guys. I'm sorry, but nobody, like, it's Top Gun. A movie where dudes played volleyball in the first one, unironically homoerotic.
Yep. And then they did the same thing, but football.
Playing with the boys. There's none of that Baahubali. None of that.
They dem boys.
We dem boys. We dem Baahubalis. I am so glad we got to watch these two movies together. I really am. This was a lot of fun. As much as I kind of walked away from the second movie, a little disappointed, this was a lot of fun. I kind of feel the same way walking away from this as I did with Doom 3, where I was like, the journey getting here was a lot more fun than this movie ended up being. That movie has its own problems. That movie gets hijacked by somebody else. That franchise all of a sudden has a major actor just waltz in and go, this is now my franchise. So this doesn't have any of that, but it's that same kind of just like by the end of it, you're like, the conclusion wasn't as satisfying as everything else that came before it.
Yeah, it was about the journey.
Well, and ultimately in the end, that is what it's about. It's about the journey from the bottom of the waterfall to the top.
That's right.
That was the best part of that first movie. So he's jumping on that waterfall. That song has been stuck in my head since we talked about that movie. And that was like a while ago. Because
we rescheduled a few times.
Yeah. Hey, don't try to do this around the holidays, folks. You'll get very nowhere. Let's just put it that way. So, Dustin, final thoughts on Baahubali 2, the conclusion.
Well, I mean, we've said a lot of it already. It was about the journey. The movie itself, like, I needed it. I after watching part 1, I couldn't wait to see it. And then I saw it, and there were just some weird, like, moments where you spend a lot of time kind of just down here, and eventually it goes up there. But there's still a lot of content there. You got to meet new characters. You got to see Katapa just kind of act like a doofus for a little bit.
Anytime he's on screen is a welcome addition to the actions of the cast. I was
first movie I've seen with Prabhas in it, and I want to see more Prabhas. Like that was he's a fun actor to watch. He's good.
I'd like to see him in like something that's not this.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I don't know, like a funny movie, like a comedy.
That would be good. He's got that about him too.
Yeah, he's kind of I don't know. He's kind of loose, right? At least as Baahubali the son, he's kind of loose. So
yeah, I assume he's still jacked.
Fucking ripped, man.
Like a rock character, but more so. But anyway, yes. Overall, I liked the series, the beginning and the conclusion. I'm glad it wasn't 2 parts. I don't know if I could have sat there for 6 hours. So 2 parts was necessary. But yeah, it's about both of them, and I'm glad I saw it.
Yeah, I will echo that almost entirely. You know, I've now watched 2 Indian cinema franchises in their entirety, one of them being Baahubali, the other one being the Doom franchise. And, you know, I wasn't not entertained. And if that's the goal of cinema, ultimately at the end of the day is to be entertaining.
Yeah.
You know, we have complaints, obviously. And if, you know, if you watch the movie and you listened, you heard what they are. And, again, we're not in the minority here, but I mean, again, this movie was rather well received, but at the same time, it's not going to be perfect. That all being said, like we've said, I can't wait to see what Baahubali ends up becoming or where they go with this franchise or what comes next. I don't know if it'll be Baahubali 3. I don't know if it'll be Baahubali TV show, but whatever S.S. Rajamouli and his production company come up with and whatever they're bringing out next, I'm game because Triple R is, like you mentioned, distillate. It's this distilled down into a much more, again, I wouldn't even say like palatable, but the fact that it's as popular Western on this side of the globe as it is, I think is kind of telling. Not that this wasn't, but that provides an easier entry point in a lot of ways that this, I think, was kind of an incubator for. This was kind of a ground to understand this kind of what we can do, how we can push this medium in this genre. So I'm excited to see wherever we go from here, and that's where we'll leave it. So until the next time you and I talk, Dustin, you can find everything that you and I do together over at weirdingwaymedia.com. This show, along with 20 plus other shows, are over there, including this show, The Culture Cast, Mike White's The Projection Booth, Scary Stories We Tell, which Dustin does the album artwork for, and a whole bunch of other shows hosted by me and a whole bunch of other people that aren't me. As for this show, BollywoodCinemaClub.com, like, rate, and review wherever you get the show, and share it with your friends. Dustin, thank you so much for joining me, as always.
You're welcome.
We'll catch you on the next episode.